Hey guys, so I wanted to talk a little bit today about time. And you may have heard spiritual teachers like Eckhart Tolle or other teachers talk about the present moment, the eternal now, different statements like that. I think A Course in Miracles um, talks about the holy instant. So, what are we really talking about when we're talking about these concepts? Is there something special about now? Isn't now or right now a moment that is sandwiched between the future and the past? I hope to illustrate to you in a very real way that that's not true. And the best way to approach a talk like this one is when I make a statement to investigate in your own experience. This isn't meant for you to just believe what I say. This is really meant for you to experientially see that this is true for yourself. Okay, so even if you need to pause the video to do that, go ahead and do that. So time is actually something that is contained in what we call the present moment. Again, just think about that for a moment. What does that really mean? Because we usually think of the present moment as this little sliver, and then before it is the past, and then after it is the future. But what I'm saying is the present moment actually contains past and future within it. So what do I mean by this statement? I'll ask you a question. Have you ever experienced anything outside of what is happening right now? Now your mind immediately pulls up what we might call memory. And it says, yes, of course, 5 minutes ago I was experiencing something else. But that's a memory. And the memory is coming up right now. So you didn't actually experience anything before. You're experiencing right now a memory. Okay, and then maybe after this talk you plan to make a cup of coffee. And that's what we call the future. But again, you're not actually experiencing the cup of coffee right now. What you're experiencing is an idea in your head about what you're going to do later. Whether or not that actually happens or not, it's another question. And actually the same is true of the past. A lot of our ideas of the past are ideas, science shows us that our memories are very poor. We can actually be led through questioning to fabricate a memory that didn't actually happen. And we very often blend memories together. So we will take a memory of one thing and we'll blend it in with something else that has a similar kind of emotional impact. Again, these aren't my opinions. These are what we might call scientific facts. Okay, so it's worth keeping in mind because I think most of us think we can rely on our memory and trust our memory. And what science is telling us is, no, not really. So what is my point? Future and past don't really exist except in our mind. And I'm going to continue to try and illustrate that. So the memory of the past is happening right now. And if you show me evidence of the past, like a photograph, so again, let's say before this talk you were doing something and I say, have you ever experienced anything outside of this moment? And you say, yes, I was playing pickleball a moment ago and here's a photograph of me doing that with my friends. Here's the evidence. But you're not showing me the past, you're showing me something in this moment, right? You're holding up your phone or a photograph, and you're saying, look, no, this just happened 5 minutes ago. But you're showing me the present again. You're showing me something in the present. You're not showing me the past. You can't show me the future. So when the future arrives, it's always what we call now. I'll ask you another question. Is it possible to leave right now? Have you ever left right now? Again, think for a moment. Have you ever been to the future? It's always right now when you get there. When you were experiencing the past, your memories that come from what you call the past, those were right now when they were happening. If you were, let's say, theoretically able to travel back in time, let's just say that that were possible, what you're calling the past would become your present. It would become your right now. That's what we mean by traveling back in time. Let's say you went to the 60s. All of a sudden, the 60s would become your present, your right now. That's what it means. Otherwise, if it's just a memory, you didn't travel back in time, right? When I remember the 80s, for instance, I'm not traveling back in time. We don't say, oh, he traveled back in his mind. No, it's a memory, and it's coming up in the present moment. If I were to travel back into the 80s at my present age, then the 80s would all of a sudden be my present moment. If I showed you your future, for instance, I would have to show it to you right now. If I had a crystal ball and I was showing it to you, here's your future, it's still happening in the present. So what we call past and future are actually concepts only. They don't really exist. They're concepts that appear in our mind in the present moment. They're ideas. Now, concepts can be very useful and helpful. I'm not saying that that means that they're pointless or that they're not real. In a sense, they have a reality, but in another sense, absolutely not. So concepts are useful, or they can be useful, but they can also be harmful. All right, if we take them too seriously, if we get confused about what they really mean, what their import really is. So I'll give you an example of this. If I think I am unhappy because of something that has happened in the past, then I'm confused about the nature of the past. Okay? How can the past make me unhappy now? How is that possible? How does something that doesn't exist make me unhappy now? The answer is really, it can't. How can it? Right? It doesn't exist. So, if the past is not making me unhappy, then what is? Well, I mentioned earlier memories. So I have a memory of the past. Again, whether that memory is true or not, to a degree doesn't really matter because it's making us unhappy now. And if we look closely at memories, we'll find that the memory or the image isn't necessarily what really makes us unhappy. It's the way that memory or image in our mind makes us feel. Okay? So the memory comes up in the present moment. And again, the memory makes us feel a certain way. And we might say that that is making us feel unhappy or miserable or causing us to suffer. Now, this might not seem very helpful or useful or insightful. It might seem, even to some of you, like terribly obvious. But the reason that it's really important is we can't change the past or control the future. We can maybe influence the future to some degree, but that often is a source of a lot of stress. The more we try and control the future outcomes, generally the more stress we're putting on ourselves. And the past is over, right? We cannot control the past. It's over. It's done. But we can change the present. So when I understand that future and past are only concepts in my mind that arise in the present moment, I'm beginning to unlock a key to happiness. You might have heard other teachers say something along the lines of, your point of power is in the present. And this is what is meant by this, is we can't be happy in the future. We can't be happy in the past. We can only be happy in the eternal now, right now. Because as we've already established, the future and the past don't really exist. So the same applies to the future. If I start to worry about the future, if I have a lot of anxiety about the future, I think something is going to happen in the future. It's not the future that's bothering me. It's my ideas about the future and how those ideas make me feel. So this causes suffering because we can't change or fix what doesn't really exist. But we can change or fix what our present is. The only place we ever find happiness, peace, contentment, joy, love is in the present moment. It's the only time we can ever find it is in the present moment. So the good news is we don't have to worry about the future and the past. We can't find happiness there. We can't find what we want there. All we really have to do is focus on the present moment and finding our joy, peace, and happiness there. So you might then ask, well, how do we do that? And that's what this teaching is all about. And I'll say it's probably simpler than you think that it is. But one key is innocence. One key is being willing to forget what you think you know. Being willing to admit that you maybe don't know as much as you think you know. It's a very key concept. Because what we think we know, like for instance that the future and the past exist and that the present is a point in time, quote unquote, point in time that is contained between the future and the past. If I think I know that, then again, this teaching that I just gave you that unlocks a key to finding happiness in eternity doesn't work. Okay? So there's a lot more that I could say, but that's all I'm going to say for today. This plugs in with many other concepts and investigations that I hope to do with you in the future to, again, sort of unwind assumptions, basic assumptions that we make about things that actually lead to suffering for us as human beings. You might notice that your dog doesn't tend to suffer. Squirrels don't suffer. Birds don't suffer. They can feel pain and they can die. And everything that has a body, the body is eventually going to die. And that's true of us too. I'm not saying any of this is going to make your body live forever. But what really troubles the human being is psychological suffering. Psychological suffering. Suffering that comes from up here or from our heart. And so that's really what yoga is about, is curing us of that psychological suffering. So I hope this was helpful. As usual, please reach out if you feel that I can help you in some way. And as always, this is given as a gift. And if you would like to help support with a gift of your own, a financial gift, you can do that through PayPal, Venmo, or you can become a patron on my Patreon page. All right? Thank you. Namaste.